Hello, Andre. This is Jack Crane with my Game 370 Homework 4 submission. So, starting with question one, I'll just run it real quick. We're supposed to make a shader, an HLSL file, and a actual shader class that runs almost identical to the previous shader. I think it was shader color. However, I was only supposed to use one matrix. So in my HLSL file, I set it up so it only requires one buffer instead of two. It takes in a float 4x4 worldview projection matrix and a float 4 selected color, and then inside the actual vertex shader, I set the output position to equal a multiplication of position in the worldview projection matrix, and the output color equals a selected color. And inside the actual shader class, I set up a struct that resembles the buffer, and inside I have a single function as opposed to the two before that takes in the worldview projection matrix and the color, and basically just sets the data and then updates the sub resources. Inside the dx app.cpp, I just set up a view times projection matrix, and then multiply. Then I use this shader pointer, my color selected 3D shader pointer, to call this send camera matrices function from my shader class that takes in the world matrix times the view times projection matrix and the color, the desired color, and then I render the model and send it to the swap chain. And that should be question one. Question two is very similar, but in this one we were just supposed to try and condense as many matrix multiplications as possible. So the only thing that changed really here was inside my color 3D, no, inside my dxapp.h, I set up some world matrices and a view times projection matrix, and inside the dx app I initialize a few of the world matrices, where the first world matrix is just a scale matrix, and then I multiply each respective world by the first world matrix and a transpose. And then inside the draw, I just set the initial view times projection matrix and use my shader pointer to repeatedly call send camera matrices, multiplying each respective world by the view times projection matrix and sending the colors. That's probably not the most efficient way to do it, but I got it to work. And going on to question, oh, we gotta run it, obviously, don't forget that. And there's the 5 cubes. And we'll go to question 3, which was setting up the pyramid and the texture map on the pyramid. So inside my model tools, I have the create unit pyramid and the create unit pyramid repeated texture functions. And inside the tools.cpp, in my create unit pyramid, I just set up 16 vertices with 6 triangles, 4 triangles for each side and 2 for the bottom square, and then each triangle obviously has 3 vertices, except for the bottom, which is a square, so I'll have 4. And then when I create the unit pyramid representation texture, I just map each of the vertices to what would be a cube corner, but since it's mapped to a pyramid, it cuts off in the middle, which gives it the we'll run it and show the look, which gives it that cutoff look where it tapers off towards the top of the pyramid on each side, and why the texture on the bottom looks so perfect, because it's actually a cube, and it's actually a square, and it stretches to the corners, which is what 1 and 0 represent on the UV map. So as you can see, here's my pyramid, a little close, but the textures are the way they're supposed to be. And the only other thing I changed, I believe, was the actual enum, and yeah, the unit pyramid repeated texture enum, and I added an extra case to the switch statement, and I did something very similar for the last problem. Oh, that's not it. Homework 4, or well, not the last problem, but the last one I was able to complete. Was not able to get 5 completed in time. Just run this one and move on to the further questions. But this one was very similar. So this one we were supposed to set up the texture map, the specific texture map of the cube. But for this one, basically I just followed the UV map in this diagram here, with each of the points being represented, able to create the shape. So as you can see, each of the squares lines up correctly. B is upside down, and bot should be facing the opposite way of T, or maybe the same way. I can't really tell. Yes, so inside the model tools for this one, I have my create unit box wrap texture as opposed to the repeated texture, and I used the UV maps. I used the vertices to basically point to specific points in the UV map, just like in this diagram here. And was able to wrap the texture around to the corners, basically. I think. Oh, and then I also changed the enums and the switch statement inside the models, model header file and model.cpp. So moving on to the texturing cube for further question 1. So for each of the textures right here, I changed the actual model to a unit box as opposed to a unit box repeated texture. And what this does to the texture is, since it is no longer being UV mapped correctly, it takes the color from the point 0, 0 and covers the entire cube with it. And in the case of each of these textures, crate being brown, I believe, crate being brown, test 512 being red, and cube faces being white, because they're not UV mapped correctly. And it's just a unit cube and not a unit texture. I forget what it's called, but yeah, it just takes the color from 0, 0 and covers the whole block in it. And then finally I can just run a performance profiler really quick for further question 2, just to show what my performance is looking like. And then once this starts up, we'll call it, and thank you for your time. So yeah, again, here's the brown because it's not properly UV mapped. And as you can see, I can just stop the collection here and get some diagnostic data. This does take a second, I apologize. perhaps I should just stop the video here. It's been a while, so thank you very much.